Let's get started. Is the slide visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible, ma'am.
Okay. So here is a brief introduction. Just an overview of the contents I am going to present today. So to introduce with how architecture shapes Indian history and the relevance of ancient Indian architecture today. So the significance of architecture in Indian history, as we all know, is profound and multifaceted. Indian architecture showcases an unparalleled blend of creativity, craftsmanship, and aesthetic sensibilities. So from the intricate carvings of temple walls to the domes of mosque, each structure is a testament to the artistic mastery of its craftsmen. And coming to the religious expression, Indian architecture has been deeply influenced by various religions, including Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Islam, and Christianity. The examples of temples, tubas, mosques, etc., they serve as sacred spaces even now, and they are the places of worship, meditation, and reflection. And Indian architecture, it's actually, we have the places such as palaces, forts, urban centers, which actually serve as hubs of governance and commerce. Then coming to the technological advancements, we have a remarkable evolution in the construction techniques, and that actually process from the ancient method of stone and brick to the present concrete and steel. So from designing earthquake-resistant structures to actually incorporating green building practices, Indian architects, they actually demonstrate a commitment to innovation and also responsiveness to the contemporary challenges. Then talking about the symbolic meanings that is actually derived from mythology, scripture, and cultural traditions. Through their design and ornamentation, they actually convey spiritual messages and narratives. Monuments, temples, etc. That is the legacy and the heritage that is actually getting connected with past with our present. That actually fosters a continuity with the rich cultural tradition that is going on in the present world. Then coming to the relevance of ancient Indian architecture today, we know that we have to understand the cultural heritage because it's a manifestation. India as a country is a has a rich manifestation of countries' cultural heritage because we know the beliefs, values, and traditions, and how the civilizations have flourished on the Indian subcontinent that we'll be seeing in a short span of time. And the essence, which is the preservation and as well as the conservation, that is actually very much essential for the architectural heritage preservation because we have to ensure all the buildings actually needs to be preserved from all sorts of calamities, like whether let it be the natural disasters or whether it is man-made. So, and then the another point of ancient Indian architecture is how the tourism and as well as the economic development can be enhanced because these heritage actually they attract millions of tourists, and that's how the economic development of the country is getting boosted. So that is very much aware of meaning we are all aware of that. So how this is actually highlighting the historical sites unique features. And also the architectural innovation, because that actually addresses the contemporary needs and challenges. How the architects are actually going on with the vernacular techniques, that is the current techniques which they are adopting, and that is with very much incorporating the climate responsive techniques as well. So how the tradition can be balanced with the contemporary needs is very much essential. Then the next one is so it's a source of pride, national pride, because we do have a rich architectural heritage, because that actually instills the pride and ownership among citizens. Then the last one is the cross-cultural dialogue, how we can, it encourages cultural exchange and collaboration, and how the communities actually develop a kind of mutual respect among diverse communities. So in summary, we can say that evolution of the architecture plays a crucial role in order to preserve the cultural heritage, promote tourism, as well as economic development. Now let's see how Indian civilizations have evolved over time. So the prehistoric architecture, we all know that the early human settlement, that the presence of human, it actually dates back to the Paleolithic period. And the humans were nomads. They were gatherers, and they actually hunter-gatherer communities inhabited the region, and they actually used stone tools such as hand axes and scrapers during, and that too with the locally available materials like quartz, chart, and basalt. Mesolithic period, there was a transition towards more settled lifestyle, because they looked for water, river valleys, and coastal areas. And microlithic stone tools that became prevalent during this Mesolithic period, and that was used for the cutting, scraping, hunting, etc. Neolithic period actually marked a significant shift in the human societies, where agriculture was the predominant trade, and also the domestication of plants and animals, because they were actually looking for more fertile area, looking for water, and also the settlement actually moved on to more permanent settlement like mud brick houses. Pottery making, weaving, and other craft industries also flourished during this time. Then the Chalcolithic period, which is known as the Copper Age, that actually witnessed the emergence of metallurgy, where the use of copper and bronze was used for ornamentation. And Harappa civilization, that is the world's earliest urban civilization, that actually flourished in the Indus Valley region with well-planned cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. They are actually planned cities in present-day Pakistan. So the regional diversity, we can see that throughout these periods, the Indian continent actually witnessed the diverse culture and also the regional variations in the practices. So in a nutshell, we can say that the early human settlements, they actually represented a complex mosaic of cultural, technological, environmental interaction, and thus the foundation was laid for diverse civilization that actually would emerge in the subsequent millennia. Then we can come to how the natural materials like wood, stone, and mud were used. They were actually very fundamental materials that was used in the construction of early human settlement across the Indian subcontinent. The main why it was used commonly, because it was readily available, and that actually provided the essential resources for building shelters and creating everyday objects. So here is how we know that the function of each of these materials, because we all know that wood is one of the earliest building materials, and it was used for constructing temporary shelters, and wooden poles and twigs were lashed with ropes in order to have framework for dwellings, and thatched roof was a very common feature, and it was also used for crafting tools, and household items were made with wood. And then came stone, which was used in the early human settlement, and that was for construction, where we have the dry stone masonry techniques, where we can actually stack the stones in order to build walls, and also stones were shaped into tools for various other purposes. And mud was another natural material which was easily used for construction. Houses were built with mud brick walls, and flat roofs were common in rural settlement, and also for crafting pottery this was used. And then some of the examples of prehistoric architecture in India, there are many, but I am just highlighting the main: Bhatka rock shelters in Madhya Pradesh and Edakal caves in Kerala. That is the prehistoric architecture. This prevalent in by looking at these structures, because that actually provide the insights into the building practices and lifestyles of early human communities. Because the Bhimbetka actually, it is renowned for the rich collection of the rock art. Rock shelters, they actually served as the habitation sites and shelter for these gatherers, hunter-gatherer communities. And the same with Edakal cave, because they were also that actually dates back to 6000 BCE, and petroglyphs. That is, we were we are even now we are able to see the sculptures that is actually carved out of the stones, and also other symbols and human figures and animals. They were all seen, which is actually covered with the rock engravings that can be seen in Edakal Caves, Kerala. Then the shift to Indus Valley civilization. That is actually the Bronze Age period. The location is the Harappa civilization, where it flourished around 3300 BCE to 1300 BCE. Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, they are the most prominent cities of the civilization. The trade and economy, the civilization engaged in extensive trade networks. Then the writing system, where the Indus script, which, because that actually remained undeciphered, because that actually limits the understanding of our language and communication system. Then the technological advancements, when we see that they are very much skilled in metallurgy, crafting bronze and copper tools. But the decline happened because of invasion and conflict. That is, there was a decline in the Indus Valley civilization. And some of the features of Indus Valley civilization, these are five main features. That is the urban planning, where the cities are planned in a very efficient way in order to utilize the spaces, and also the trade and commerce flourished, and India played a major role in the economic history, because we know that the exchange of goods, ideas and cultures happened across Asia. And coming into the technological advancement, there was a wide range of innovations in that period of Indus Valley civilization, where importance was given to healthcare as well as manufacturing, and these advancements have actually transformed the country's economic landscape. And coming to the agricultural innovation, most modern practices that was actually invented during this period, during the Indus Valley civilization. And then the social organization encompasses the diverse structures, institutions and norms that actually govern the interactions and relationships within the society. So moving on to the baked bricks, drainage systems and urban planning, where the baked bricks were utilized for construction, that actually helped in creating durable structures such as houses, walls and public buildings. There was a well-featured advanced drainage system, which actually consists of well-planned drains and sewers, and then planning of cities. It was meticulously planned with grid-like street layouts and residential and commercial zones. Each area was zoned in order to have a proper planning of the streets. Then examples of Indus Valley civilization. As we already talked about Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, just coming into the details of Mohenjo-daro, this is one of the well-known cities, and the main attraction is that they have impressive structure that is built with baked bricks. And everybody would have heard about the Great Water Bath, which is a well-planned public bathing, which is actually believed to have religious or ceremonial significance. It actually do have well laid out patterns of streets and lanes. So it's actually a planned city. Harappa is also the same, like Mohenjo-daro. It all and architectural. They have of well constructed buildings, because there are residential. So moving on to the Vedic and early Buddhist architecture, then the decline of Indus Valley civilization happened around 1900 BCE. that decline actually brought out Aryan migration and settlement. That is, Indo-European speaking groups known as Aryans, they actually migrated into the Indian subcontinent from Central Asia. So the Vedic period was actually started with the migration of Aryans. And that was actually named, we know the four Vedas, and out of that, Rig Veda is the oldest of the Veda, which actually provides the insights into the Aryan society, the beliefs and the rituals, etc. And then the cultural interaction and synthesis, because the transition from the Indus Valley civilization to the Vedic period, because there was a kind of cultural interaction and synthesis between the Harappa population as well as the incoming Aryans. So that actually is the second urbanization period. And some of the characteristics of Vedic architecture, it is the huts and the temporary structure. And these structures are designed to be very portable. That actually marks the nomadic lifestyle of the early Aryans. And there were fire altars, that is the Agni Kunda, which was used for performing the sacrificial rituals. So the ritual platforms and the sacrificial enclosures, they were all part of Vedic architectural composition. Later transition to permanent structures. So because then there were specific names that was given to the settlements, that is puras, which is the fortified settlement, and the residential houses were made of brick and stone. Public buildings were called as sabhas and temples are devasthanas. So that was the transition that happened in Vedic. Then the early Buddhist stupa and monastery. These stupa were the mark of Buddhism, and that actually served as focal points for devotional practices and pilgrimage. The development of architectural stupa that actually evolved into elaborate structures, that is such as a dome, a square base, and a harmiga, and that has a small square structure, the top of the dome. So we all know the great stupa at Sanji, which actually dates back to the 3rd century, which is still one of the significant stupas in India. And alongside stupa, there were monastic communities, that is the Sangha, the Buddha that actually began to form, necessitating the construction of monastic complexes or viharas. And the construction of stupas and monasteries that actually facilitated the spread of Buddhism across Asia. And they still serve as centers of religious practice, learning, and community. So these are some of the pictures of Khajuraho temple as well as the great stupa at Sanji. And we know that the timber was mainly used for construction in the early period, and it was utilized for structures, roofing, and creating column. But stone and brick actually became more favored building materials because of its durability, of course, and also the longevity. And this was used for construction of temples. That is, the stone and brick was used in the construction, and brick for constructing residential buildings, stupas. And here in this Sanji Stupa and Khajuraho, the use of stone and brick actually created lasting architectural designs that we can see even today. Classical Indian architecture, that is the classical period which is called as the golden age of Indian architecture under Maurya and Gupta Empire. That is during Maurya, that was led by Emperor Ashoka, Indian architecture flourished. That was actually the starting of the construction of the stupa at Sanji. And then the Gupta Empire, which is often referred to as the golden age of Indian civilization. Significant achievements were made during this period. That is, there are 3 temple styles, which is the Nagara, Dravida, and also the Vesara. So here we can see that during the Gupta period, that actually witnessed the development of the Nagara style of temple architecture. And that temple construction, it actually witnessed a proliferation with temples that is dedicated to mainly Hindu deities. And notable examples of this temple are the Dashavadara temple and the Vishnu temple at Deoghar and also Tigawa. And the legacy that actually the architectural innovations that actually laid the foundation for the architectural styles and traditions in India, and the principles and the aesthetics during this period actually continued to influence the architecture. This during the classical Indian architecture period, that actually led to the introduction of these rocket caves, that is Ajanta and Ellora, which actually emerged during the 2nd century BCE. These caves, they actually serve as monastic retreats, meditation halls for Buddhist as well as Hindu Jain communities. They actually exhibit remarkable architectural and artistic achievements, and that actually is just carved. These caves are carved directly into the volcanic rock of Deccan Plateau, and they actually have this intricately carved facades. That is, the cultural significance is that they are the UNESCO World Heritage sites, and it is of course considered as the one of the masterpiece of Indian art and architecture. Rocket caves. So here the development we can see of temple architecture, which is the Nagara, Dravida, and as also Vesara. And we can see the model of the temple, that is how the architecture of the temple, the structure is seen, and what are the style of those temples. The Nagara, it was prevalent in North India, and it is characterized by shikara or the spire, which is actually curvilinear in shape, and they actually have a square sanctum, and this actually surrounded by the shrines and the mandapa. And this is having carvings of divine beings, apsaras, and mythological narratives. And Dravidian style actually flourished in the southern part of India from 7th century CE. CE is actually the Christian era according to the Julian calendar. When you say it is 5th century, it is actually from 401 to 500. The Dravidian temples, they are actually distinguished by the massive gopuram, often adorned with the sculptures, and we see in most of the temples in Tamil Nadu, and we have this Dravidian style of temple, and they have enclosed rectangular precincts with actually concentric walls leading to the central sanctum. And here is an example of Nagara as well as Dravida, and how the evolution and the regional variation happened is that they actually underwent evolution and variation over the centuries. While the Nagara style was in northern India, like Odisha and Gujarat, the Dravidian style actually diversified into substyles like the Chola Vijayanagar. And Nagara and Dravidian temples, they actually serve as important religious and cultural landmark that actually reflects the spiritual beliefs and innovations. And they continue to be the centers even now of worship, pilgrimage, and cultural festivities, which embody the enduring legacy of India's architectural heritage. So the advancements in classical Indian architecture in both the sculptural art as well as the architectural technique, it is actually characterized by a refined mastery of all those techniques with intricate details. Sculptures demonstrated exceptional skill in creating lifelike representations of deities, mythological figures, etc. And also for constructing the monumental structures such as temples, palaces, and forts, architects they actually developed sophisticated techniques. How the use of materials like stone, brick, and timber employed with advanced engineering principles in order to create structurally and aesthetically pleasing edifices. They actually included the use of corbelling, arches, domes, and walls for stability. Then coming to the next point, that is the iconography and symbolism, which is the advancements. They were intertwined with the development of both iconography and symbolism. Here, sculptures and architects, they actually imbibe their creations with those symbolic meanings, significance, and philosophical concepts. Symbols such as lotus, wheel, and also swastika adorn sculptures. They represent auspiciousness, order, and divine attributes. So these symbolic motifs, they serve to enrich the visual language of ancient Indian art and architecture. Then the start of the 550 AD to 1200 AD was the early Middle Ages, which is the medieval Indian architecture, where the influence of Islamic architecture happened during this period. That is during the Delhi Sultanate as well as the Mughal period. That actually reflected a synthesis of Persian, Central Asian, and Indian architectural traditions. Islamic rulers, they actually commissioned the construction of mosques, tombs, across India, and that actually became prominent architectural landmarks. And examples are Taj Mahal, Qutub Minar, and Juma Masjid in Delhi. And in structural engineering, the innovation happened during this period, and how the structural stability can be attained through such constructions. That was something that happened during this period. And architectural techniques like how use of projecting arched entrance, and how the vaulted walls, and also the small pavilion or the dome, how it became the characteristic feature of Islamic buildings in India. And in overall, it provided the durability and stability over a period of time. And then the presence of gardens and water features, that is Islamic gardens, especially known as the Charbagh, that was actually incorporated into the Mughal architectural complexes, that actually creates a harmony to the surroundings, because they do have, as you see, there's a waterway, and they do have pathways, water channels, fountains, and actually that serve as a place for relaxation and contemplation. So, in medieval Indian architecture, there was the introduction of Persian elements in the Indian architecture that actually occurred through cultural exchange, through trade and diplomatic relations between the Persians as well as the Indian dynasties. The cultural exchange that is happening between those people. Architectural features is that, as we said, like most of the Islamic uh, elements, that is as domes, arches, minarets, etc., that was actually reflected the influence of the Persian architectural styles also. Mosque and palaces, because they were prominently featured, all these Persian motifs that was actually featured in this construction of palaces, forts, gardens, etc. The integration of these Persian elements into Indian architecture, that actually left a lasting legacy that shaped the landscape of the Indian subcontinent. And here in this medieval Indian architecture period, we can actually see a blend of Hindu and Islamic architectural styles, because that is the syncretic architecture where there is a mix of religions that is happening. The meaning of syncretic is that there is a mix of various religions, cultures, beliefs all blend together. And here we can see the Indo-Islamic architecture styles that actually emerged during periods of cultural exchange, and that coexisted between the Hindu as well as the Muslim rulers. So this actually resulted in the creation of unique architectural forms, because that incorporated elements from both the traditions. So that actually led to the diverse religious and cultural landscape of India. And we can see that Islamic arches, along with Hindu style brackets, Hindu motifs such as lotus flowers, water pot motifs, etc., into Islamic. So, either way, there was a fusion of Indo and Islam. And some of the examples of this synthesis is that structures like Qutub Minar in Delhi, that actually features both Hindu and Islamic elements, intricate carvings, calligraphy, and the nice handwriting with a pencil, and Islamic arches. All these can be seen during this period. And it actually reflects the spirit of cultural exchange and religious tolerance that actually existed between the Hindu and Muslim communities in India. And now moving on to the evolution of modern Indian architecture. That is, there was a colonial influence that happened on Indian architecture during the time of British rule, and that lasted for around 200 years, which had a significant impact. That is the Indo-Saracenic style, that is a fusion of these Indian and Islamic architectural elements with European style that actually favored for public buildings, such as the government offices, universities. Neo-Gothic architecture that actually inspired by the European Gothic architecture, which actually utilized for churches, cathedrals, and government buildings. Colonial bungalow style actually suit British needs. That was the characteristic feature was the large verandas, pitched roof, and spacious interior, which actually served as a residential and official structure. Railway stations, bridges, combining the British architectural style with the local materials and techniques to support the railway projects. And that happened. And public buildings, that is the construction of grand public buildings, monuments and landmarks that actually symbolizing the British power and authority, such as the Gateway of India and also the India Gate in Delhi. Emergence of Indo-Saracenic architecture, the main 4 points that we can quote here is that this Indo-Saracenic architecture actually emerged as a result of synthesis of various architectural styles because it combined elements of Indian, Islamic, and European traditions. And that reflects the cultural and the political context of the British rule in India. So the administration, it promoted the Indo-Saracenic style for public buildings during the late 19th and early 20th century. Architectural features was mainly of Islamic-inspired domes, arches, and minarets. The purpose and function of this Indo-Saracenic buildings that were constructed for a range of purposes like offices, universities, museums, railway stations, and palaces. And modern Indian architecture, where you have the modernist movement and the post-independence architecture, like the key points is that the idealism and the nation building. Post-independence architecture in India was influenced by idealism and the vision of nation building. And modernist principles such as simplicity, use of new construction techniques, that was actually embraced by the Indian architects because that actually featured like clear geometric shapes, etc. Post-independence also saw a resurgence of regionalism and contextualism because architects began to explore these traditions and the vernacular styles that actually is possible with the current available materials and also the climatic conditions. So that is what is called the vernacular style, which actually incorporate into their designs. And that was responsive to the local climate, culture, and context. So this actually led to the emergence of diverse regional architectural styles across different parts of the country. And coming to modern Indian architecture, continuing the contemporary trends. What are the contemporary trends in Indian architecture? So several contemporary trends were shaping the Indian architecture. So I am quoting just very few here. And we all are aware of how sustainability, every point, it's a very important point, sustainability and the green design, because that actually includes the use of eco-friendly materials, energy efficient systems, passive design strategies, and incorporating green spaces into urban environments. So that is one of the key points. And then there is a growing emphasis on adaptive reuse projects where the existing structure, they should not be demolished, but they should be repurposed for new functions. But at the same time, we should preserve the historical as well as the cultural significance. Then came the technology integration, which actually had rapid advancements in the technology. Like the most important is the building information modeling and the digital fabrication techniques. It has been influencing the contemporary Indian architecture in order to streamline the process, optimize the performance, and also to create innovative forms and structures. So with all this, it is possible to have the create innovative forms and structures. Then coming to urban renewal and mixed-use development, in response to this changing lifestyle, of course, there has been a focus on the urban renewal projects and also the development of the mixed-use spaces that actually combine the different uses, that is the residential, commercial, and recreational uses. So all these projects, finally, they tend to create vibrant, walkable neighborhood that actually promote social interaction as well as sustainability. So the ultimate goal is to have an inclusive development. So for talking about the sustainable practices and technological advancements, that what we see for the future is one of the main thing is the passive design strategy, because Now we can see that the architects are focusing more on the passive design strategy in order to, of course, improve the energy efficiency and to reduce the environmental impact. So that actually includes some strategies which include the optimizing the building orientation, how we can maximize the natural ventilation using the shading devices in order to minimize the heat gain and also incorporate the thermal mass to regulate the indoor temperatures. These strategies also reduce the reliance on mechanical heating, that is the HVAC, heating, ventilation, and cooling system, and leading to lower energy consumption and thereby reducing the operational cost. Then coming to the renewable energy integration, there is a growing emphasis on how we can integrate renewable energy source such as solar power into building design and construction, which is getting very common these days, like how the solar panels are being integrated into the rooftops as well as the facades in order to generate clean energy on site, and how to reduce the dependence on the fossil fuels and to lower the GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. So these advances in this solar technology, that is actually we do need support from the government, incentives and policies, how we can promote renewable energy. That actually made solar power, which is becoming increasingly viable as well as cost effective option for Indian architects. So then the some of the other practices and technological advancements that actually include the digital design and fabrication technologies, because BIM, that is one of the major technological advancement that has happened in the building information modeling, the parametric design tools, and as well as the digital fabrication techniques. They are actually changing the way how the architects are designing and constructing the buildings in India. And BIM actually it enables the architects in order to have the digital model of the buildings, like facilitating the better coordination between the various stakeholders and how the project can be efficiently incorporated and how the rework as well as the errors that can be minimized at the time of construction. So that's the main advantage of BIM. And also the digital fabrication technologies, which is the 3D printing and also the computer numerical control, which also allow the architects to create complex geometric forms and also customize the building components with precision and efficiency. Thereby, we can open up more sustainable and innovative design solutions. And then the coming to the smart building technologies, like with the in IoT, Internet of Things, and smart building technologies, we architects have started to incorporate sensors, actuators, and automated systems into the building design. So the smart building systems, they can actually monitor and also they can control the lighting, the just like HVAC and other building systems in real time, like the heating, ventilation, and air cooling system, how they can be controlled in real time and how the settings can be adjusted based on the occupancy pattern, external conditions, as well as the energy demand. So, in a nutshell, we can say that all these sustainable practices as well as the technological advancements that is actually reshaping the landscape of Indian architecture, and that actually drive towards a more environmentally responsible and technologically advanced built environment. So that is how the future of India is going to be with the advancements in the modern architecture, but still we are actually following the traditions of the architectural style, preserving that as well. Thank you.